and welcome to this short-term rentals webinar on building a short-term rental brand or empire, sponsored by Price Labs and Minute. You've just been watching a preview video to our annual Shorties Awards, and we'll be opening up our platform for nominations next week with more details to come in our Monday newsletter. So I'm the editor of Short-Term Rentals here at International Hospitality Media, and also the host for today's session. And before we begin, let's introduce our first webinar series sponsor, Price Labs.
Price Labs, a leader in revenue management, is unveiling its breakthrough release. Discover the new hyperlocal pulse dynamic pricing algorithm. By tapping into hyperlocal market trends, it's setting new standards in accurate pricing and response to market changes. With our smart presets, customize our algorithm easily and get personalized guidance. With our desktop app, speed up your workflows and manage multiple listings smoothly from your computers. Experience our award-winning product created by a world-class data science team. With our global reach, anyone, anywhere can use Price Labs. Discover more game-changing updates crafted to propel your short-term rentals to success. Visit pricelabs.co/breakthrough today.
So a big thank you to Price Labs, and here is our second series sponsor, Minute.
Hi there, we're Minute. We make home sharing work for everyone, hosts, guests, and communities alike. We've developed the world's first indoor and outdoor sensor built specifically for hospitality, and the only one that integrates with Airbnb. The Minute sensor monitors noise, occupancy, motion, and temperature. It's camera-free, so it protects your guest privacy. We can help you prevent parties and noise complaints, enhance guest experience, and protect your rental properties, just like a co-host would. When Minute detects noise, it notifies the host. It can also contact your guests via Airbnb messages, SMS, or an automated phone call. Similarly, you'll be the first to know when there's a risk of crowd, the AC malfunctions, or someone tries to enter your rental between bookings. And the best part is, you can install Minute yourself in minutes. That's why we're trusted by hosts and hospitality professionals in more than 100 countries. Find out more about how Minute can help you host happy at minute.com.
So thank you to Price Labs and Minute for sponsoring our webinar series and our webinar today. Really looking forward to that. So some webinar guidelines for today. All of the details are going to be posted in the chat throughout, so please do go there if you'd like to ask any of our panelists a question at any time today. We'll have a panel discussion leading into audience questions today, and then a recording will also be sent around to everyone within the next 48 hours. Next slide. So let's introduce our speaker lineup for today. Just all briefly introduce yourself. So I'll start please with Alex.
Sorry about that. My name is Alex Huesner. I am the Chief Marketing Officer with Casago. I am in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I've been in the industry for about 14 years now. 13 years served as CMO for Condo World, which was a regional vacation rental management company based out of Myrtle Beach, and also an OTA, and moved over to Casago about a year ago. And I'm also the co-host of Alex and Annie Real Women of Vacation Rentals podcast. Thank you for having me today, Paul.
Thank you, Alex, for joining us today. Really looking forward to hearing your insights. Next up, please, we'll bring in Ali from Plum Guide.
Hi, so I'm Ali. I'm Chief Brand Officer at Plum Guide. I've been with Plum for 2 years. Prior to Plum, I led brand strategy and marketing for a number of different brands in the fashion lifestyle space, so including Hunter, Armani, as well as brands like Converse, Versace, Abercrombie and Fitch. And what is Plum Guide? Just very briefly, not history and advertorial. So we cut the crap in short-term rentals with, say, selecting only the best homes. We all know that short-term rentals can be a little bit of the Wild West of accommodation booking. So through a combination of AI and human vetting, we meticulously vet every rental, rejecting thousands that don't make the cut.
Thank you very much, Ali. Next up, please, we've got Andy.
Hi, I'm Andy Medic. I am currently the CEO of Stay Attention, and that is a vacation rental management consulting company. I've had that for 2 years. Prior to that, I was the CEO of a small vacation rental management company at the Delaware beaches, and that was Sea Change Vacation Rentals. Unlike the other guys here today, I do not have a formal background in marketing. Everything that I've learned has been from the ground up, the hard way, which is why now I work with small to medium businesses and help them optimize their vacation rental brands. I'm also the host of the industry's first brand marketing podcast, and that is called How the Guest Was Won. And thank you, Ali, for kind of an ad for it, because we are in the Wild West still.
Excellent. Thank you, Andy. I'm going to do my best to not get all of your names confused, because we've got 3 people with very similar names on the panel today. But last, but my name is Lisa. We've got Suk from Hostaway.
Hi there, I'm Suk Basra, VP of Marketing at Hostaway, all-in-one vacation rental software. I'm a relative newbie to the short-term rental industry. I started this in January, but I've been doing marketing for quite a while, almost strictly in B2B SaaS in the tech world. I'm very excited to talk to you and give perhaps a bit of a different perspective on things. So yeah, really excited to get going.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Suk, and to all of our 4 panelists today. Really looking forward to this. So to add a little bit of context to today's discussion, we've covered Alex's appointment at Casco last year, and the company has since grown its footprint by more than double over the last 2 years. Next slide. We'll be discussing Plum Guide's unique marketing campaigns and Hostaway's big capital raise earlier this year, and how both are contributing to their brand recognition. Next slide. And we've also looked at a couple of companies in the space who are rebranding their names or refreshing their brand design, from Thinking Traveller to OTA Insight, now Lighthouse. We've also covered a rebranding story today with Dove Vivo, Altido, rebranding as well. So yes, it's a fascinating space at the moment. Now, before we get on to our speakers, we've done something very special over the last week. We went out on the streets of London last week for a couple of Vox Pop interviews, and the question we asked them was short-term rental platforms that anyone had heard of. So just take a look at this, and there might be a few interesting takeaways.
Only Airbnb.
Yeah, only Airbnb.
Yeah, Airbnb. That's about the only one, I think. Not off the top of my head. That's the only one I've used.
Yeah, I've heard of Airbnb. Off the top of my head, no. Airbnb is my go-to.
Just hostel websites and Airbnb websites. I don't know if I can name any specifics other than Hostel World.
I haven't really. I guess like Airbnb maybe.
So yeah, so the video that we recorded last week was with 5 people on the streets of London. Nothing scientific, of course, about it, and of course this was just a small pool of people that we interviewed. But interesting, nonetheless, that Airbnb was certainly coming out as the dominant brand that people had heard of. I think it's interesting timing as well, because just today I saw that Interbrand were reporting that Airbnb has had the fastest rise in global brand value this year, growing its brand value by 21.8% to $16,000 million, which for the those of us on this call who are good at maths, I think that translates to $0.016 trillion. But we've got 4 very distinct brands on the panel today, and I'm very excited to discuss brand recognition with you all today. So I'm going to turn first to Ali, because in the introductions there, we were hearing about your experience at the likes of Hunter, Giorgio Armani, Converse, Versace, all very recognizable names for those of us who aren't in that particular industry. But from your experience, what do you think you first need to identify when it comes to building your brand?
I think what's interesting to say is I think it's my first experience working in a startup, but I honestly believe the same rules apply, whether you're in a mega brand or in a small startup. What matters is ultimately going back to basics. What's the problem you are solving? So what is it that you're standing out from the crowd, and what is the piece of information that you as a brand you're going to solve? And then the second thing for me is when you've established that and the problem you're solving is how does that actually then resonate with the customer? There's a brilliant, maybe I shouldn't be promoting, so I'm not taking commission on this, just FYI. There's actually a brilliant book that I read recently called Branding That Means Business. And a quote from they said that brands matter only if they matter to consumers. And I think that's a really powerful takeaway. So thinking what's the problem you're solving, but actually how do you achieve that cut through and resonate with the customer? And then when you've established that, for me, is making sure that that messaging, the narrative you want to land is consistent and carried across every touch point that the customer will engage with you as a brand. I think that's been particularly apparent for us at Plum Guide, is that we're conscious that disappointment is what we're trying to solve. It's all too often some of the guest experience and how you make sure that you're showing what your points of difference are versus an Airbnb. It's no surprise to me what those people said about Airbnb. It's a multi-billion-dollar business and they've done an incredible job that every brand would want to aspire to. But for brands starting out, like in the short-term rental space, what is your point of difference versus an Airbnb if you're a booking platform? And that's something that we've spent at Plum Guide a long time trying to establish and make sure that it's very clear in all of our brand comms and messaging. And also guest experience is another thing that's central to us. So how do you make sure that you're really landing that, whether you have an exceptional care team, making sure that that comes across in every touch point, in every part of the messaging of the brand?
Yeah, we've got another slide actually just to show the team in the back end. We'll bring this up now, but you did this particular campaign around no time for average stays, and to be quite honest, you're focusing on life and death around this campaign. So this is quite a unique and provocative campaign. What was your thinking behind this particularly?
It's punchy. Like
it's certainly that.
We told people they were going to die, but the reason we did that is when I first started the brand, I was looking at the Instagram feeds just as one channel reference point for what every brand does in the short-term rental space. And they show image after image of a beautiful villa, a beautiful pool, a beautiful home. And it's very hard when you're looking at that brand to try and tell the difference about what they offer versus another one. So what I did was try to come up with a tagline working with an agency is of what really best represents a brand. So we came up for no time for average stays, really reflecting that life is short, particularly post-COVID and the cost of living crisis, holidays really matter, and slightly making an enemy of average because you want to feel aspirational. So we then went, okay, how are we going to stand out? So we built a campaign around how many holidays you'd have left with an average life expectancy of 80. And if you have one big holiday a year, so we said, for example, if you're 52, you have 28 holidays left. If you're, a good example there, 64, you have 16. And then a little cheeky, if you're 84, you have -4, which when I was discussing with my 78-year-old dad was quite a difficult conversation to have, but I'll do anything for brand fame, just to grab people's attention and remind them that life is short and you want to make sure that every holiday is special, which is what the Plum Guide brand USP is, to eradicate that disappointment and not having a disappointing experience when you're there.
Thank you, Ali. I have to say I'm a big fan of these campaigns and you know the unique nature of them. I know you won a Shorties Award as well for the branding last year. So we'll come back to that very shortly. I want to keep this slide up as well because we'll get on to our other campaign shortly. But first I want to turn my attention to Alex, please, because Alex, you've got so much experience within the space as well. So, but you've also covered you've gone from Condo World to Casago, and you've also got this media company on the side. So what has maybe been consistent and what has been different when it's come to building each of these brands and their recognition?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's probably been more differences than I would say there are similarities, but I think you can still kind of tie some common threads there together. With Casago and Condo World, the similarities were Casago, Condo World both marketed to homeowners and to guests. For Casago, the third part of that is to potential franchisees. And for Condo World, the third part of that was to potential OTA partners. So this role that I have, both in my previous role and this one, was very similar in that it was a three spokes there of what marketing looks like versus a lot of companies that are in short-term rentals. If they're property management business, it's just homeowners and guests. And to Allie's point, though, I think, a lot of companies have just really, they're not emphasizing the importance of the guests, and the guests are really where brands are built. That is where scale comes from. That's where mass adoption comes from. That's where visibility comes from. But in the age of Airbnb, we're all making short-term decisions, and we need to get bookings. It's easier just to put the properties on those sites and go by their rules. And then, as we all know, you build your house on somebody else's land, and then all of a sudden you're not in control of it anymore. But it's gone on for long enough that it's hard to now reel it back in. So some differences and similarities in how that works, and also being a regional player at Condo World, being a national player with Casago. So everything's just bigger, and just on a larger scale with more inventory and more partners within it. With the podcast and the media company side of things, it's completely different. But I will say at the heart of it is, people want to do business with people they know, like, and trust, and being visible through the podcast and making these connections with our brand partners and with our guests are actually listeners. So it's a different version of, or definition of, how we define a guest. But bringing these voices onto the show and just, being able to utilize the reach of that in order to also help with, my full-time job at Casago, it's all very symbiotic. So I've seen different things that have kind of conveyed across the lines. Certainly design is super important. Design, collaboration, probably two of the main things that are very important, and this is similar across the board.
Well, we're actually covering a webinar all about design, interior design in January, so that'll be well worth tuning into. Yeah. But something that I've always found notable with your podcast in particular, and I think the growth of it over the last year or so has been near stratospheric, really. But you focus particularly on these aha moments, as you call them, and inspiration, opportunity. So is this sort of something that can be applied to all of the companies that you've worked with and the whole industry as a whole?
Absolutely. That's a great question. That's a good way to put it too. Yes. And when we started, Annie Holcomb, my partner, when we started the show, that was really what we wanted to do with it was, we don't want to just talk about tech stacks and OTAs and property management systems all day long. We wanted to tell the stories behind these people and the brands that have built them to where they are today, both the good things and the bad things and the struggles, what they've learned in their journeys. And really, it humanizes who they are. And I think that definitely applies across the board for any sort of property management business or technology business. I think the humanization of it, yes, definitely during my role at Condo World, and some things that we're working on now at Casago, is really putting guests more in the front-facing side of what people see. So, also to Allie's point, you see a lot of pictures of the actual properties, and yes, they're all beautiful. At this point in time, nobody should have bad pictures anymore. Everybody's outgrown that. So how do you differentiate? You show experiences, you show people that are enjoying that vacation, you show the memories that they've made, because really, I don't look at what we do as solving a problem as much as I look at it as we are helping people build memories. So what does that look like? It's a little bit more on like the positive side of things. And it's solving problems is another very good way of looking at how to build a brand. But for us, it's more about the memory making and what we then are able to show back to guests on, what that looks like and what is ingrained in them for years to come.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alex, for those insights. I'll turn over to Andy now, because we'll touch on the Aldi image shortly, Andy. But you also come in with you've got the podcast perspective and the brand perspective from being a owner of a short-term rental management company. So from what you've learned, what exactly is a brand, and how did you kind of find that branding process when you were launching initially?
So a brand, really, it's something conceptual. It's a perception of a business in the mind of the customer. And the textbooks will tell you that the customer owns the brand. But really, what does that kind of fluffy conceptual stuff mean to a small business owner? And it really means, how well does your business solve a problem for your target customer? And my background, I started from just 2 properties that I self-managed at the Delaware Beaches. My competition were legacy realty companies that had been around since the 1950s. And for the first 2 years that I was in business, I kind of struggled. I had no formal background in marketing. I had no real understanding of really marketing and how branding a brand differed to marketing. And you kind of have to figure out the hard way. The first 2 years were really chaotic. And I think it really showed me that in this industry, we have 2 really big problems. Firstly, guests just don't trust our product. And by default, they don't trust our brands. And secondly, we have 2 sets of clients. And Alex kind of hinted at this. We have property owners, investors, and we have guests. And hang in there out there. Any listeners to this podcast who are self-managing properties that you own, kind of think about this, because you're trying to balance your own needs as the property owner with the needs of your guest. And 2 years in, I'm just sort of struggling, running around trying to keep 2 sets of clients happy, often with conflicting goals. And it just was not working. And I looked at our website. I looked at our total dependence on OTAs to source guests. And, on our website, I was making the same kind of mistake that my competition were. It was an informational real estate-based website. There was nothing guest-facing about it. And then a light bulb went off for me, and I thought, you know what? Who's bringing in the revenue here? It's the guests, right? So if the OTAs were to go away tomorrow, I have a real problem because guests couldn't find us online. So that started for me really what was a 6-month process, which now 10 years later, now I know a lot more about marketing and branding. I've kind of figured out that I went through a brand strategy process. I picked my business apart, and I had to figure out the hard way, really, the difference between a brand and marketing. And for me, marketing is tactics. It's the things that you do to promote your business. And branding really is conceptual. And it's kind of fluffy and abstract. And a lot of small to medium business owners, they don't think it applies to them. They don't really think about, they think that marketing and branding specifically is for large companies with deep marketing budgets. And it's not. We all have brands, personal and professional and business. It's better that it be an intentional one based on the needs of your customer rather than your needs.
And all really interesting points there. Now, we in preparation for this webinar, we were reaching out to our panelists, and we were saying if there are any campaigns or anything that have inspired you for your work. So you mentioned this Aldi one, and to be honest, there was a bit of a theme there with British brands and supermarkets. So what was it about this brand, this Aldi brand on the left, that inspired you, and how does that kind of translate to our industry as well?
I think, when I think about the campaigns that resonate with me, they generally are centered around food. I do have a background in specialty food businesses, but that's not really why I think it resonates. I love humor in marketing and branding. And for me, it tells me that if a company is brave enough to use humor in their marketing and in their brand association, that tells me that they really know what they're doing when it comes to marketing, because humor is really difficult to pull off well. It's difficult to straddle that line between offense and humor. And I don't know, it resonates with me, and that the British supermarkets do it very well. Since we spoke last week, Paul, another one popped into my email. I get the Marks and Spencer weekly customer emails. Oh, yes. And this week's email was titled Jumpers for Joy. They were promoting Marks and Spencer sweaters. jumpers, we call them in the UK. And those 3 words really told me a lot. You know, I live in the States. I've lived here for 30 years, but I follow Marks and Spencer brand name really, really closely. There's a reason why that company that's been around since the 1800s, there's a reason why they're surviving and thriving in a brutal retail landscape when other department stores have fallen by the wayside. And those 3 little words, jumpers for joy, it got me thinking about Christmas. And I'd love to get Marks and Spencer involved in my family Christmas. You know, they're speaking about joy and they're speaking about clothing, but my mind's going to food. That gets me researching Marks and Spencer food, and I wish I could get it in the US. So humor and really just, I feel like they're inside my mind. You know, I feel like they're solving a problem of how do I look good to my guests over Christmas, but more than anything, they just make me feel happy, and that's what the holidays are about. So good job, M&S.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Andy. And that's quite a unique take for that our industry can take forward. I'll come to Suk as well. You've been waiting patiently, Suk. So, you know, with Hostaway, you mentioned you're a relative newbie as well to the industry, but you've got the experience of marketing beforehand. So, what exactly does a brand mean to you, and what do you think it takes to build a successful one?
A lot of good answers. Tough to follow up this crowd, but to me, it boils down to a brand is an expectation people have of your business. And it's a promise to live up to that expectation. And that could be a negative expectation, that could be a positive one, but it's how people, it's how they perceive you. And it's how the saying goes, your reputation precedes you. A brand says something on your behalf, so you don't have to say it yourself. And oftentimes, before you even have a chance to say it, it truly is your reputation out in the world. And what it takes to build one takes a consistent, deliberate effort. This is not an afterthought. This doesn't just happen organically. And if it does happen organically, then it's out of your control, and then that's not the best scenario to be in. You have to really figure out who do you want to be perceived by, and what do you want those people to say. So be really clear with the who part, right? Really figure out one target market, similar to how Ali said, right? Because different audiences want different things, and they want to hear different things. So figure out who it is that you want to communicate with, and figure out what you want to say and double down and communicate that. In practice, like, think about it this way. If you were to be on every screen in the world for 30 seconds, what would you say about your business? Every phone, every TV, every laptop, quick elevator pitch. What would you want to say, and whose attention do you want to catch? Are you known for the best experience? Are you known for a certain type of property or certain geography? Like, I'm just based in California on beaches. I'm just based in the UK. Am I known for the best value? Am I known for cleanliness? Figure out what's important to people you want to communicate with and how you want to be perceived. And that's all it really is. It's an expectation, and your promise to live up to that expectation. So it's not going to happen by chance, it's not going to happen by accident. And you better hope that you can control that narrative and that perception of you.
Thank you. So I'll come back to you shortly, but we've got a poll that we did on LinkedIn last week, and I know that our speakers contributed to it as well. So you can see there we did the question: can Airbnb's brand recognition be replicated or bettered by another company in the short-term rental space? Now, to be quite honest, I wasn't sure what the results were going to be, but we had a good turnout in terms of votes and responses. And we got the result of 65% yes, Airbnb's brand recognition can be replicated or bettered, compared to 35% no. So interesting takeaways perhaps to bring about from that. I don't know if that's people bigging up their own businesses or from a wider perspective, but I'll turn first to you, Suk. Maybe you've got a reaction to this, but how do you think businesses are trying now to differentiate for themselves from the competition, and particularly when you've got a brand like Airbnb dominating in this way?
So bear with me, because I'm going to ramble. There's a lot of different ways to answer this question, but it's so important to have a brand differentiate yourself. We just ran a quick survey a few weeks ago at Verma, and it's such a saturated market that 47% of property managers that we surveyed said that there's significantly more competition year over year. That means more inventory than ever. It is so important to stand out because you have so much more competition. This is great for OTAs, right? They have a lot more inventory that can truly compete, hotels and all that, but the actual hosts themselves, where they might have had almost a monopoly in their area or their type of property, now they have to compete with so many others. So how can you differentiate yourself? There's a few ways to go about it. One is really doubling down on that target market. If you've picked a customer and perhaps there's a common theme between all your customers or all your properties. So like an example could be if all your properties are near a golf course, right? Really double down on that. Double down on that. Okay, this is my customer. This is what's important to them. Do small things that really add up. If there's a golf course where all your properties are, then put cleat brushes outside, have golf umbrellas, put a putting green in your backyard. Really figure out what's going to speak to this person, because once they identify, okay, I'm going to go golfing, and this property manager, they really care about my experience, they're going to go out of their way to book with you. And you can honestly expect more money out of them too, because you resonated, your brand message resonated with them. And another way to go about it is just make the guest experience really memorable. The goal is set the high water mark that no one can ever live up to again. And think that create an aura of excellence. And think of brands that you go to on special occasions, right? Or you want to treat yourself. You go to an Hermes or Tiffany or Ritz-Carlton. You have an expectation. You have an expectation of excellence. That every interaction is going to be perfect. They're going to care about you. It's going to be the highest quality. It's going to be stress-free. If you can communicate that aura of excellence, you can have this loyal customer base and keep coming back to you over and over and over. They'll seek you out and they'll pay you more dollars, and you have that recurring retention that you really need to set that business. And from a practical perspective, be obsessed with reviews. And it's all about third-party validation. Think about how you buy, right? Anytime you go out there, you look for product, Amazon, whatever else, you look for third-party validation. So get in the mindset of every customer, because how they purchase isn't going to be all that different from how you purchase. So all these little ways, there's not one route to really differentiate yourself and build your brand. There's different tactics, and I think you have to use a combination of them.
Thank you, Suk. And I'll go to Ali next, because Ali, I think Suk's raised some really good points there. And I think the crux of it is actually there's a lot of different routes when it comes to building a successful and distinguished brand. And I think that's something that you've definitely done with Plum Guide, about distinguishing yourself. So, from your perspective, we've just seen that poll too. How do you think you can truly stand out from a crowd when we talk about how fragmented this industry is? And from your perspective of your branding, is it better to be provocative or even controversial, or targeted and sort of more mass market? I wonder what your thoughts would be.
I think being provocative, as you can tell, I really believe in it, but you've got to have something behind it. You've got to have depth to your campaign to actually land back to what you're trying to say about your brand. If you're being provocative for provocative sake, you're not going to get very far. And I think that's the biggest thing I take away, and just being really consistent to what your brand stands for. Interestingly for us is that actually that we realize there's not a lot of people that can, no, that's unfair. There's so many people who can't deal with mortality and there's other people that can. And what was powerful for us is how actually the consumers started debating amongst themselves, having that fight, and we could just sit back, stay silent, let them have that narrative. And it was so interesting about how people started standing up for the brand, what Plum Guide stood for and why it was relevant. And if you just did a punchy campaign without having that, it would be true. Wouldn't be true. And then just actually in answer to your question about the Airbnb, I really debated about that answer on the question. And I said no. And the reason I said no, which I may get shot down for because it came to Plum Guide to make it the next Airbnb or to reach the scale and size of Airbnb, is actually what they're doing very effectively is constantly evolving. And with their product releases that they're doing every quarter, and that constant evolution, listening to their guest, building their kind of brand marketing and tactical activity and product development around what the guest needs, it's going to be very hard to reach their scale whilst they are moving forward. If they were resting in their laurels and not investing in the future of Airbnb, it would be a very different proposition. But while they're doing a good job at that. So as I said, the point of difference, and for any other brand in the space, is to think about what's your point of difference to Airbnb, if you're an OTA, and what are you doing that's actually bringing value to a customer that is looking for something slightly different.
So you intentionally want that debate around the marketing campaigns as well. That's what you're getting at.
I think also when you have limited budget, if people are then going to start spreading that and fueling that word of mouth for you, the hard work is then done, because you can just let that run. The word of mouth spreads, they start talking about you, and that's the kind of ultimate sign of success with that virality.
Yeah, that's a really good point actually. And if we've got marketing and branding experts, chief brand officers, whatever. And we'd love to hear your thoughts in the chat. So please do post your comments and any questions for our panelists too. Now, Alex, I'll come to you as well, because I think, you know, with the podcast with Alex and Annie, you've also been one of these big proponents, big advocates for how short-term rental isn't just Airbnb as well. Interesting. Now we come to that after the poll, and you know, I think from being in this industry now for the past 5 years, you can really appreciate the depth of property management companies, OTAs out there. So, how do you think Casago is differentiated from other companies operating in a similar space to you?
Yeah, and I voted yes on the Airbnb question, just to start that way.
I'm not too surprised.
We started the hashtag and the t-shirts hashtag We Are Not Airbnb last year. Got a little slap on the wrist for that, but that's okay. But I think that brands can compete with Airbnb in a reasonable way. That one, I mean, most property management companies are not multi-market. I mean, Casago is, and I mean, there are several that are, but most are not. And they don't need to compete with Airbnb on a national level. I mean, that's obviously not going to happen. But I think there is definitely opportunity for brands to compete at a regional level, at a local level, especially in destinations that are big repeat markets. I mean, Myrtle Beach, other parts of Florida, South Carolina, the East Coast, several West Coast ski destinations. Those are areas that people go back to year after year. And if they go back year after year, you've already got a lot of, you know, tailwind behind you, that if you're doing things right and really become the expert in that market, you can beat Airbnb. I mean, when I was at Condo World, our site outranked Airbnb, VRBO, all of them. So it's possible. And that wasn't just because we had been in business for 35 years. That started within the last, 10 to 12 years of really focusing on that growth. I think where Casago's position comes in is, now trying to not compete with Airbnb, but we are more on that, global level or international level, that it becomes more challenging. But the way that we've grown our brand to this point has more been from the inside out versus the outside in. And I say that, to kind of explain the franchise model, that we partner with one company per market. Normally, these companies are within the top 3 in their market, strong operators, but there's something with that they want to grow. They want the access to the better tools and technology, the economies of scale of a national brand. And they understand that there's power in working together with another company that has access and leverage to those things, but then also knowing that they're not going to lose their own brands. And so our approach has been a little bit different, that it's more of a co-brand. So I think that has it's definitely something that's different within the market. There are some other franchises that are out there. Obviously, we know what Vacasa has done, and several private equity companies, when they come in and they typically get rid of the brand completely. We're kind of, in the middle part there, that it is a co-brand, that we're not buying companies. We leave the local ownership in place. So I think, Casago's position is coming in from truly understanding the industry, what makes an experience for homeowners and guests exceptional, and that's having local boots on the ground. But then being able to provide them with this access to the technology, the economies of scale, the buying power of a much larger company.
Nicely articulated there, Alex. And I can see Karen Piscatelli, one of our former panelists, saying co-brand is brilliant.
Thank you.
We'll turn back to Andy as well, sort of relaying on where we were before, Andy. But Joanne, thank you very much for your comment, actually. And it's saying, interesting about humour, since I didn't get the Audi ads at all. But Andy, maybe this is actually the point of a brand, that it kind of creates that debate, and some people will get it and some people won't, or they won't. Different people will get different humour and appreciate different things. But when it comes
to...
Yeah, please.
Sorry, back to the Aldi ad specifically, I had to do a little bit of research. I didn't fully get it. I got the Lemon on a Prayer, the Woe, with the song Living on a Prayer. But when I had to research the actual thought behind the ad, they were talking about half price, that this is a half price promotion, so we're halfway there. So not 100% successful. The humor, really, the point that I was trying to make is that when you think about if you think about the type of industry you're in, and we're in the travel hospitality industry, we're in the business of providing great guest experience on their vacations, right? So that's a fun thing. So have at it, make your brand kind of a little bit quirky and a little bit fun. But I want to go back a little bit to, we were talking about defining a brand, because I don't think I fully articulated it. To me, a brand is about a curation of standards. And I voted yes on the Airbnb question because I think that the world is waiting for another brand to kind of get to that level of recognition. And I think the reason why Airbnb have been doing it so well, it's not just the scale of their budget and how much investment they have. It's the fact that they've made it so easy for guests, for customers to do business with them. From the navigation on their website, and they provide a booking service, right? That's their product. They're not property managers. They provide a portal through to the stay for the guest. And therein, I think, lies the challenge and the missed opportunity for Airbnb. And where there's a missed opportunity, that's an opportunity for somebody else to come in. I don't understand why Airbnb and also Vrbo, the OTAs, I get that they don't do property management, but why don't they have a set of curation standards tied around their own brands that put listing criteria on the property managers, the hosts that are putting their properties on their platforms, and that would tie in then totally into guest trust. And that's why I think there's a real opportunity for a brand like the Plum Guide. I think, Ali, you guys are doing a phenomenal job, and I really think that's the future of this industry. It's guest facing, and you handle the curation standards behind the scene, but you find a really good way of messaging directly to the guest, the source of the revenue. Trust us, trust us with your vacation. So yeah, I think there is an opportunity for another Airbnb.
And you kind of moved into my next point there, Andy, too, which is great. And it's talking about consistency, especially when you're scaling and keeping those standards. So how do you think you keep those standards consistent and also in line with your brand purpose as well?
Well, and to set the context of my background, I built a highly curated portfolio of properties across 5 beach towns in Delaware, and we maxed out at around 82 properties. Not a huge company, in terms of volume when you compare to other companies with thousands of listings, but we were built on a strong set of brand standards, which really came out of my head in the beginning. And I would go out to a property, meet with a potential owner, and I always said, I had a saying, I could see the cake in a jumble of ingredients. I could look at a property and I could know, based on the feedback from guests, if the property as is would work in our portfolio. Is it going to meet the needs of the guest? Even down to sleep capacity, the type of furnishing in there. Does the scale of the dining table match the number of guests that the property sleeps? That ties into how easily I can market and fill that property, and also how much, what my pricing is going to be for that property. So if you think about being consistent and reproducing something that's in your head, you got to get it out of your head. You've got to get it written down into a set of curation standards that say, this is how we pick a property. It's based on this, and this feedback from a guest. And it's the guest need that's driving it, not the real estate or the personal needs of the property owner. Of course, we want to maximize the value of the investment for the property owner, but we need to reach a message to the guest. And I think in terms of consistency, write it down, get it into actual repeatable systems, roll it up into a formal brand guide, and then roll that down into guides, which are really requirements on your future property owners, so that they know ahead of time when they're going to come to meet with you, if it's a type of property owner or a property that's not going to fit your portfolio curation standards, why waste anybody's time? That owner would maybe move on to a different company. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely, and more, I'd say. So thank you very much for that, Andy. And Ali, there, I think what Andy said and what our previous panelists have said there is really intriguing, and the sense I'm getting that authenticity and trust is very important when it comes to scaling and building and developing a brand. Something that you're trying to do now with Plum Guide. So if we talk about, say, business principles, which you're trying to apply at Plum Guide, what do you think is important to retain for you as a chief brand officer?
I think I like amen to Andy on the brand guide. we call it the brand proposition, but like having ultimately your guiding light of what it is that you stand for. I don't need to say anything more than that because I think it's so essential. But I think with that, what it also helps you do is police yourself. So you're never losing sight of why you exist in the first place. And it's a reference point for every department within the business, however big you are, whether you're 2 people or whether you're 20, 200, 2,000, everybody has those reference points of what a brand should be. It's been something we've been very conscious of as we use AI for a lot of the process now to vet homes, which has obviously taken the lead from humans and our experts to be able to do that curation process. But it's been really important landing back to what our USP is to make sure that human element and the quality vetting process remains there. And if your USPs are an exceptional service and a disappointing free stay, you can't lose sight of that as you continue to scale and make sure that comes back and those standards are consistent. And also just to add on to what Suk said, which is super powerful, that kind of what's your billboard saying. Don't try and overload the consumer. Like, don't try and land the 17 things that you think are important. Land that one thing that is going to resonate and help build your brand.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that, Ali. I'll go to Alex now as well, because you're a company, we mentioned it before in the context slides as well. You're on this big growth trajectory. You've more than doubled your footprint in 2 years. I think we were looking at you've had 160% increase in destinations where you're doing partner operations. So, what maybe has been your secret to this? How are you differentiating? I know there's something interesting, particularly on the training side that you're working on.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to the natural trajectory of a company that is growing. I mean, we're a startup and a grown-up organization. Casago has been in business for 22 years, and the franchise model has been in existence for about 3. But the way that we've grown is, it's kind of like you got to push the Coke can. It's got to start going a little bit, and then it starts. Once it falls over, then it's, it becomes a lot easier. But, got the first few franchises, and this was before my time. And then in the last year, we've really just started to ramp that up. But as you start growing throughout markets and you start bringing on symbiotic markets, that definitely helps a lot. And I saw that for sure in my role at Condo World as well. We just sold the market for Gulf Shores, Orlando, New Smyrna Beach, Daytona Beach, and one other one. So, I mean, 5 within the last couple of weeks. I mean, those are major markets. So getting those key markets down is a big thing. And then picking the right partner is super important too. That, Steve Schwab, our CEO, as he grew Casago, the culture was incredibly important to him, that he knew when he wanted to continue to grow this beyond, just his portfolio of properties, he had to have a framework that he could replicate, and that he could know that Casago's standards for how homeowners, guests, employees are treated would be utilized throughout all these different destinations. So we've actually got our Orange Credo book that we have a daily standing meeting, that there's a letter and there's values that depict that letter of what the company stands for. And one person on the team reads that page in the book. And then we talk about something that happened that day or that week that's applicable to how we've lived that value within the company. And I had never been part of an organization that did anything like that before. So this has been really interesting to see, how much that is infused. But I can tell by doing this. I mean, certainly the people that are part of it and the stories that you hear, they truly love property management. I mean, they love what they do, and they love hospitality, and getting to hear these stories, that also makes a brand come to life through the employees. That now when I'm out, I'm in more of a true sales business development role than I am in a traditional marketing like I used to be. But when I'm out talking to these different companies now, it's easy to see who would fit in with this and maybe who wouldn't. But picking the right partners has been a big part of that growth.
And you've also got this Casago University training program as well, which you say is unique to you.
Yeah. So actually, I went there about a year ago. I was down there for 2 weeks, and our franchisees, they go down for a week. I stayed 2 weeks to get in the field training and in the classroom training, which was excellent. But they're trained on how to use our software, how to use the technology, the history of the company, the culture of the company. So some of the true hard things or the actual tactical things that we do, but then also the behind the scenes of like what this actually means to be part of this. And I think once you go down there and you see that, it changes how you look at the business. We don't expect all of our locations to operate exactly the same. There's no way they possibly could. I mean, every market is different. There's different nuances to how business is done, how it's procured. I mean, the different ways that things work in mountains versus beach, et cetera. So the main thing is, we want people aligned on the core values of how we operate. And, we teach them the standards that we have that work in our markets, but things can be amended to how they best see fit. So it's not a traditional franchise model where it's like, this is the hamburger and this is exactly how you make it. This is how we suggest you make it. But if you need to do something different, as long as you're aligned with our values, that's perfectly fine.
Thank you for that, Alex. And
sure.
I know that we published this Q&A with Steve Schwab, your CEO, last week as well. So I don't know if my team in the back end would have that, but we'll try and get that link up in the chat very shortly. Suk, I want to turn to you as well, because I think we talk about how much investment is coming into this industry, and we talk about acquisitions and consolidations all the time too. But Hostaway has done possibly the biggest raise, or one of the most high profile this year as well. So, what maybe has been your secret? You joined sort of towards the end of the year, but how did you get Hostaway to the point of securing that investment, and how far did you need to look ahead to do that?
So as much as I'd love to take all credit for that, I can't. I'll end of that process. So full credit goes to my teammates, but I did learn a lot while we're going through the fundraising process, talking to investors. And honestly, when it boils down to it, there's nothing that you shouldn't already intuitively know. It's about creating value for your customers, right? If your customers aren't successful, you're not successful. It's that easily. There's a lot of solutions out there, some great, some not so great. It's very easy to switch around if you're a relatively small host. So we made sure that every customer of ours draws value from a product. I think that's consistent across any brand, any service that's successful. It's people that come back over and over to you because you actually solve a problem for them. You have put together a great product that solves that problem in a great way, a very feature rich. We truly believe in what we do, so much so that we have, our co-founders are still host themselves. They host other properties. They travel around. There's a policy in the company that you don't strictly have to, but it's very encouraged that anytime you travel, go to short-term rental, get into the mindset of our customers, and be genuine. People can smell the BS from a mile away. And lastly, really hire the best absolute people possible, because more so than any other industry, and when it comes to tech and software, there's no other input. We're not hosts. We can't just go and just source the best properties out there, right? There's only one input for us in software. It's our people that put together a great service, a great product. So we're obsessed with getting the best talent possible. And we're doing a lot of great things with this investment. We're continuing to develop our product as much as we can, right? It's already so feature rich. We're really trying to solve every single problem in one place for any host out there. And we're expanding our services team like crazy. We're hiring a bunch. Our onboarding, our customer success, our tech support teams. We just went live with 24/7 support. So we're doubling down on making our customers successful. And if we do those two things, everything else takes care of itself. We've got a great product, we've got great service, and our brand will keep developing on its own. So we've already gone the right direction. We're known for providing a great service. And if we keep doing what we're doing, I think everything else takes care of itself.
And when you did raise that 175 million in May, I remember the brand video as well afterwards, where your three co-founders were going through the desert and searching for this funding as well. So that stuck in my head 6 months later. So clearly done a good job all around the brand around that funding. So thank you for that, Suk. And I'll go to Andy as well, because Suk raises a really interesting point around hiring as well. So if you're looking to scale and keep the brand standards consistent, who should these companies be looking to hire or have in their team?
I think you have to, don't forget, as the CEO or the founder of the company, what your role is and should or could be. It's so easy in the early days, in a startup, and it's manic. You're trying to do everything. You're keeping plates spinning in the air. Take a breather and hire a really good general manager. Another word for it, a really good executor, somebody that can really roll out your vision. And then you're not running around trying to do everything. So I would say hire a good GM first. And then, hindsight is always crystal clear. I would say in hindsight, my experience looking back on 10 years of building my own brand, I would say brand strategy is revenue strategy. Everything in terms of how you curate the standards in your brand, in terms of how you pick a property, how you stage a property, even down to the type of clients you think are the best fit for your brand. Tie that all together and realize it has a direct effect on the amount of revenue that you're able to bring in and the amount of revenue you're able to deliver to your property owners and your investors. So brand strategy is revenue strategy. I would hire a revenue strategist as soon as I can afford to hire a general manager. And I'd put the revenue strategist in charge not only of revenue management, but I would actually, for a short period of time, I would put them in charge of marketing in total. And then from there, I would roll out and I would hire into key leadership positions. Look at I had a rolling 5-year plan in my business. I would look backwards, by all means, at your finances. Always have 5 years of prior finances, your books ready, but look forward 5 years at a time and think about where you want to take your business, not just in terms of scale and number of properties, but in terms of a mixture of what your managed portfolio looks like based on what your guests are looking for in your area. If you're in the mid-Atlantic Delaware beaches, the type of inventory there looks very different to, say, Panama City Beach on the Gulf Coast of Florida. We don't have a lot of high-rise condos. So, tie that into your planning and be ready to explain that, I think, as you're starting to gear your business towards maybe a potential sale.
Thank you very much, Andy. Now we've got just a little bit of time left, but we've had a question from Tom James, and it's directed to you, Alex. Now, what I'll probably ask you to do, Alex, just as we've got a minute or two left, is if you can write the answer to Tom in the chat or contact him directly after this session. But Alex, the question was, what changes did you make to switch your website from a purely informational site to differentiate from your competitors? So if you could put the answer in the chat, Alex, or contact Tom. We know Tom away from Wales afterwards. So
I think that might have been meant for Andy, because Andy, you were talking.
Can I answer that?
I think that was meant for you because you were talking about the informational site. But
I think, and if you could do that in the chat or contact Tom afterwards, just so we can get to our final slides, then we can just conclude things. So a big thank you to all of our contributors, to Alex, to Ali, to Andy, and to Suk. I think it's been a fantastic discussion today, and we honestly could have talked for much longer. We had a lot more questions we could ask, but we are back on Tuesday, the 12th of December, same time, so exactly 3 weeks' time, for our annual short-term rentals trends webinar. This is always one that gets a lot of traction, lots of insights and expertise on our panel. We've got 3 speakers already confirmed for that. So we do hope you can join us again then. And the sign up link is in the chat now. Opportunities to work with us, please do contact my colleague Jordan, whose details are on the screen now. We're going to keep the session open for just another 2 minutes as well if you want to jot down any details from the chat. Big thank you to Price Labs and to Minute, to our excellent speakers today, and of course to all of you for tuning in. We'll see you all again very soon. Thank you very much, everyone.
Hello, we are International Hospitality Media, or IHM for short. IHM is the #1 brand to engage with decision makers in hospitality and real estate. Our 4 multimedia brands lead their respective sectors with breaking news, comments, trends, and opinion across a variety of multimedia solutions. We provide an inspirational community to connect people through world-class events, webinars, podcasts, award schemes, and much more. But let us share our story of who we are and what we do. Over 10 years ago, Piers & George had a light bulb moment to provide expert opinion, comments, and low-cost digital content. And so they went on a journey over the past decade, creating media platforms to serve the hospitality and real estate industries. We now have an engaged audience with a reach of over 60,000 monthly visitors across our website, 48,000 of our email database across all the sectors, and over 67,000 across our social channels. Everything we do believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. We make things simple and very easy to work with us. And we're a friendly bunch too. We offer creative solutions to help you achieve your business goals. Read, watch, listen, meet with IHM. Contact us for a chat today. Just look at some of the brands we have worked with recently.